reason I highlight China is that they're kind of like the final boss as it relates to all-time highs in crypto. The macro is lining up perfectly.
Crypto markets just changed in a big way. You won't believe Standard Charter's new Bitcoin price predictions for Trump winning versus Kamala winning. Now, before that, how is the U.S. economy in general? What are the expectations for the U.S. economy over the next year? Expert Tom Lee reveals what he thinks will happen over the next 12 months. Looks like he's been right about this before.
Tom, let me start with you. It was in April on this program that you said you thought the S&P 500 could close at 5,700, maybe even higher. Well, looky here. Look where it is today, right about 5,700. So the maybe higher part is still a part of your formula?
Yes, I think it's part of the formula because, bull markets are supported by strong fundamentals, and this is a case where not only has the economy survived extremely high interest rates, but the Fed is beginning to cut rates, and an economy that has sort of been languishing has been China, and now we have some stimulus and what looks like some bazooka policies that is supporting that region, and we have a lot of cash on the sidelines. So I think that this is a formula for stocks to do pretty well the next 3 to 12 months, and that's why we think that we would be well beyond 5,700 before year end.
Now, knowing that the U.S. economy has strong momentum, let's talk about Bitcoin. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. Expert cycle trader Bob Lucas, we've shared his work on the channel before. He says that Bitcoin's 2025 setup looks perfect. Sometimes a script looks too perfect. It's hard to believe. Bitcoin closes the second year of the 4-year cycle next month, entering the third and historically explosive year of the cycle. An 8-month base has been built, sentiment reset, and rates are easing. I mean, the script is perfect. And this chart does look really bullish. Is Bitcoin in the longest period of consolidation during a bull cycle in its 14-year history? 8-month launchpad? The largest pump in crypto history is loading. Actually, the truth is that Bitcoin's script really got reset back in January of 2024. The Bitcoin market reset happened the moment that BlackRock got involved. Even Michael Saylor recognizes this.
I think the modern era, the institutional era of Bitcoin adoption starts January 2024. What changed in January 2024? The SEC approved 10 to 11 spot Bitcoin ETFs, and that started an avalanche. So we went from a perception that this was not an endorsed or legitimate asset class at the regulatory level, and someone could have said, I think the SEC is going to ban it, or they're going to deem it a security or something. And the world changed by the middle of January, and now it was clear that it wasn't going to be banned.
So the only unknown at this point is Kamala versus Trump. This is the only unknown, and it seems like these two are locked in a dead heat. So you let me know in the comments if you like Trump better or if you like Kamala better. It will be interesting to see which name gets commented more. Standard Charter is bullish on both of these two candidates. Jeff Kendrick of Standard Charter forecasts fresh all-time highs by the end of 2024 for Bitcoin if either candidate wins. Now, for Trump, he is more bullish. Listen, here are his price predictions.
I think we go to fresh all-time highs by the end of this year, no matter what happens in the US election. It would be relatively clear that a Trump presidency should be more positive, given he's been relatively constructive on Bitcoin in particular, but also the broader digital asset space over the last couple of years. So in his victory scenario, I predict we go to 125,000 for Bitcoin by the end of this year. In the Harris scenario, again, I think we do go higher, but to about 75,000 by the end of this year. And that's because Harris is definitely not President Biden. So President Biden has been quite negative on the sector the last few years. Earlier this year, in May, President Biden vetoed the SAB 121 repeal bill that had passed through the House and the Senate. So I think now that the sector has become politicized, if you like, it'll be very difficult for a then President Harris to a similar repeal to what President Biden has done. So again, a somewhat positive story, but a much more positive outcome in a President Trump 2.0.
So fresh all-time highs by the end of the year, 125,000 if Trump wins, 75,000 if Harris wins. Do you think these predictions are likely by the end of the year? Do you think Standard Charter is on point? I think something like this will happen, and when something like this happens, so many people will be left on the sidelines, buying in higher, pushing the price higher as they realize what's actually happening. And this is another reason why I encourage you to subscribe to our channel, stay updated on the cryptocurrency market every day. People who follow our channel bought Bitcoin here, bought Bitcoin here, bought Bitcoin here. And the fact is, unlike the internet boom of the 90s, which was primarily confined to accredited investors in the US, Bitcoin is global. You have no idea how high China is about to pump Bitcoin. Asymmetric's Joe McCann explains the China-Bitcoin relationship here. Listen to what he says at the very end, and make sure you subscribe to Altcoin Daily for daily crypto content just like this.
I think the big change most recently, of course, is obviously the Fed cutting 50 basis points, but also the coordinated central banks' efforts to also cut as well. So whether this is the ECB, the Bank of England, the Bank of Canada, et cetera. So we do have clear tailwinds as it relates to global liquidity picking up, which has a direct impact on risk assets and particularly Bitcoin, and of course the longer tail of tokens in crypto. But the most interesting thing to me is the news that's recently come out of China. I know we saw ahead of the Golden Week in China, which is October 1st through the 7th, which just ended last night. The PBOC and the broad kind of finance ministry, if you will, of China came out with some pretty accommodative, stimulative policies for not only the banks and helping recapitalize them, but also for consumers. China has a domestic demand problem. It's not a new thing. If you look at anything over the past, I think it's the last 11 quarters, they've had a pretty persistent state of deflation. This is a problem for some place like China, where they're an export-driven economy, and if their domestic demand is effectively zero in terms of growth, they need to fix that. And so there is actually a pretty strong correlation between the expansion of China M1 money supply. So these are deposits that are not necessarily just going in savings account like M2, and the price of Bitcoin. So what we saw at the beginning of the year, yes, we knew the ETF was coming. We knew that there was going to be a strong narrative behind those ETF flows, and that actually did happen. But what a lot of people didn't see was the expansion of M1 money supply in China as a direct correlation to Bitcoin's price improvement.
How does that fit into all of the other catalysts that are kind of at play for Bitcoin right now? It kind of sounds like this idea that we're probably going to retest the all-time high by the end of the year. Probably even break that and get another all-time high is still a likelihood. But given everything you just said, how would you place that among the other themes? And what would you say is sort of the dominant theme to get us to those new records later this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's all connected. And so, if you zoom way out and you just kind of look at, say, the global liquidity picture, global liquidity bottomed in October of 2022. These liquidity cycles tend to last between 5 and 6 years. We're not quite halfway through that yet, and we're just now starting to see tailwinds pick up on the global liquidity side. The reason I highlight China is, I wrote in our latest asymmetric market update this past weekend, is that they're kind of like the final boss as it relates to all-time highs in crypto. The macro is lining up perfectly for Bitcoin to make new all-time highs later this year. But the kind of catalyst, or really the accelerant, I think has a lot to do with policy that comes out of China. So, if you look at the global liquidity picture today, we keep hitting new all-time highs every week. And that's whether that's, collateral ratios improving on U.S. treasuries that are deposited as collateral, or it's actually the expansion of, central bank balance sheets or easing policies that they've put in place. These are all naturally accretive to things like Bitcoin. I do think that Southeast Asia, being that it is about 70 to 80% of global trading volume as it relates to crypto, and yes, crypto and Bitcoin is banned within China, but as you start to see a loosening of monetary policy in the region, that tends to spread to the broader region throughout Southeast Asia. And so from our perspective, yes, we're going to see things like the TGA being drained. By law, Yellen has to spend that money. That's accretive to liquidity. There is the potential for rules changes to the discount window to remove the taboo effect of banks actually posting collateral to the discount window and receiving cash. That could be stimulative to liquidity here in the United States. But ultimately, what ends up happening in Southeast Asia, we think actually is going to be the thing that drives Bitcoin to new all-time highs.